call the meeting to order, and please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And with that, let's see.
I'll make a motion for the agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Henry.
I'll make a second.
Second by Councilmember Sayre. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, community comment for anything not on the agenda. Anybody? You'd have to come up to the front and introduce yourself.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Jenny Stone. I'm a resident. I'm also a school board member of District 112, and I would like to put on the agenda the resolution supporting the District 112 referendum. I think Brent Merrick had a resolution submitted to him.
We did, yeah. That is not something that we chose to put
Okay.
on the agenda. We did receive that, and I think Brent received feedback.
But not to put it on
not
the
to put it
agenda.
on the agenda. That's
Okay.
correct.
Can we talk about polling and places where people could vote on the agenda for the upcoming vote?
Well,
I
do you
see the
wanna-
2020 vote, but I don't see the 2019 vote where people can vote this November.
Are you asking for something on the website?
Something on the website, or yes, where people can vote. Is that possible?
Sure.
I see the 2020.
I think that
on
that's
there?
something. Yeah, I'm not sure because this is a school board
Right.
election. These were municipal elections. I think that's why you're seeing the information
Okay.
so readily on the city's website.
Okay.
As far as Facebook and website, it's definitely something that I can follow up with Brent on.
Great. I just want to let people know that there's options. They can early vote at the district the district center.
Okay.
They can vote on
Do
Saturdays.
your spiel, Jenny.
So I just wanted to
go.
share.
Where is
you
that?
don't
Where
have
do
to
they
wait. You
go?
can early
Yes.
vote. You can early vote. At the district office and on the district website. You can vote. We have a couple of Saturdays that is open to vote, so you don't have to wait until November to vote. So we're trying to make it really easy for people to come in and do their absentee voting or early voting for the referendum. So just wanted to reach out and see that, and I didn't know how you felt about the resolution to support the referendum. So that's just why I'm here, and here to answer any questions that you have about it.
Do we know what the times are for the
Mostly it's during business hours, so I think it's 8 to 4. At the district office, and we do have 2 Saturdays. I'm sorry, I don't have that right in front of me. We do have 2 Saturdays that are available to early vote as well.
Okay. Can we find that on the?
On the district website, it has all the early voting times, so you can just pop in any time and vote there. We do have Carver County licensed voting judges there, so it's not a school district, it's a Carver County judges that are there to handle all absentee ballots.
And on election day, I think it's normal election day.
It
hours,
is,
7
right.
a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yep, correct. Just, if that's not convenient for people,
Absolutely.
that the district is offering some options. So,
Jenny Stone, I have a question, and thanks
Yes.
for being a Carver resident and
Yeah.
Sit down.
I think
and
I'm
making
the first Carver
yes,
resident
and-
that has served on
yeah.
the school board.
and making yourself available. That's
Yes.
a nice combination of those two things. If somebody had questions, would they contact you directly? How do they
They
reach you?
can contact me directly. I have both a school board Facebook page, and as an elected official, I have my number posted, and I have a district email address. They can email me and ask me any questions. In fact, tomorrow night I'm meeting a Carver resident that had a lot of questions at Harvey's Bar. I'm not opposed to a beer and a question. So I just want to make sure that we have the truth out there. And I understand people have a lot of questions and they get a lot of information, and it's a lot of discernment. So I just want to make myself available to Carver residents because Carver's really growing. And so many of these decisions affect us, our city. And so I just want to make myself available to people. And so, all I have to do is reach out. It's really stonejenny at district112.org. So, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you so much. Any other questions that I could answer at this time, or, so, okay.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, moving on to 5.1, presentations and reports. 5.1, prosecution services. Mr. Metz.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Mark Metz. I'm the Carver County Attorney, and thank you for having me here to present on prosecution contracts. I will go through a short PowerPoint presentation and talk about what our services are, who we serve from the County Attorney's Office. At the end, I also want to just discuss Carver County Drug Court that we're going to begin here in 2020. So, the County Attorney's Office prosecutes and contracts with 10 of 11 cities in the county, and Chanhassen's the only city that chooses to hire its own private firm to prosecute for misdemeanor cases, petty misdemeanor cases, speeding tickets, and the like. By statute, the County Attorney's Office has to prosecute felonies for every jurisdiction in the county, but the cities can choose to contract with whoever they want. Fortunately, 10 of 11 cities have historically contracted with our office. And so we serve these cities, and you can see who we serve. Whoa. Okay. Flipped up a little bit there. Sorry about that. Back up. Okay, so who we serve, you can see of those cities. And then what I did a couple years ago is we did a pretty thorough audit of our office to determine what is a fair rate for the cities and what type of cost come from our office. And so we took the amount of hours and the time that we spent. We did our best calculation to find out the county attorney staff cost, which you can see on that slide is just about $203,000. Now, if you look at the fine revenue, that's obviously from tickets and the fines that the county gets. So we take that off of those staff costs. We reduce that. And then we also take off about $19,000 from contract cost allocation. What that is the Carver County Board has committed to lower the cost because they believe this is the best approach, is to have our office prosecute for the cities for a number of reasons. So they want to give some type of allocation and contribute for that. And then you take the surcharge, which you can see is $90,755 for 2020, and that surcharge is divided among cities that contract with us. In addition, we have a 3.68% surcharge which is added on, and that's just the standard percentage for this year that the county has across the board. So we talked to the cities and the managers and met with them and said, what's a fair number for really the cost of living and the cost of this practice to go up? And so it could differ every year. It could go up or go down a little bit, but this year it's 3.68%. So the next slide, it goes through a average essentially for the last 3 years, and we think that's the fairest approach, is to take a 3-year average, because you can see, take Carver at the top. 2016 we did 70 cases for the city. 2017 it dropped to 48. 2018 60, so the average is 59. So the 6.77%, that's the percentage of cases we handle of all the cities. So you juxtapose that with Chaska, 51.7% of the cases. So half the cases we handle and prosecute are really with the city of Chaska. Obviously, they pay a significantly higher rate.
Excuse me, can I ask you to comment on the cases listed at the top of the chart where it says adult and in parentheses it has some abbreviations?
Sure. So that's petty misdemeanors, which is not a crime. Speeding tickets, stop sign violation. The maximum penalty for that is $300. Certain parking violations, unless it's an ordinance violation, which makes it a misdemeanor. So get a speeding ticket, that's a petty misdemeanor. Misdemeanors, DUIs, domestic assaults, theft cases, Fleet Farm theft cases. We get a lot of those cases, so those are misdemeanors. Okay. And that's part of why the city of Carver has some higher numbers, really, is because we prosecute those cases if we're asked to. If somebody steals something that's $10 at Fleet Farm and it's investigated, we're going to prosecute that. And then gross misdemeanors are, if you have a prior DUI, you get another DUI that makes it a more significant crime. That doesn't include felonies. I didn't put the numbers on felonies, but obviously we prosecute all the felonies for the cities, but good question.
Perfect, thank you.
So the contract rates, you can see this is a good opportunity for me because the rates are going down for you, so that's good. Not for everybody, but again, that's just the fairness approach of how many cases we do. So you can see that there's a reduction in the rates just by the average. So if the numbers go up this year, then three-year average could be more or less or stay the same. And you see, New Germany, we don't do a lot of cases for them, so they basically they're going to pay $310, but Chaska's the most, so almost $47,000. Next slide just shows that 3.68% surcharge. So you take the city of Carver, $8,078.89, and that's a difference of over $1,900 of reduction. So that's good. So the budget goes down a little bit, at least this year. And then I like to put this slide in because it kind of shows the citations issued from Carver County Sheriff, State Patrol, and Chaska Police Department. So you can see that in 2018 for the Carver County Sheriff, it's actually gone down a little bit from 4227 to 3918. And then you look at the State Patrol, that's up from 2015 from 1,041 to 1,368. So you're talking about 300 more cases that our office is handling for the State Patrol from that range. And then Chaska kind of has stayed a little bit steady there. So our office is made up of, we have 18 attorneys and 34 employees. And I like to say this every time when I go around to the cities and talk about that really the heart of our office and the success that we have is because of the dedicated public servants that every single day serve the citizens of Carver County and serve your citizen and serve it well. And so I'm proud to represent them, and we work hard to provide justice every day. It's not just obviously criminal cases that we prosecute. That's what I'm here for you. But we represent the county board. We represent all our different divisions. So we have a juvenile division that handles child protection cases and juvenile delinquencies. We have obviously the criminal division. Then we have the civil division, which is very busy with lots of different legal issues that occur in the county. And then we have our office administration, which obviously assists everyone in the office. So with that being said, before I turn to just the Carver County Drug Court, I don't know if you have any questions about that presentation, and I just have maybe 5 minutes on the drug court.
Questions on the presentation so far?
I like that our costs are going down.
Appreciate your help with that.
Yeah.
I really do.
I'm not sure that anything to
Yeah.
do with it.
And I don't know why that is. And I don't know why that is in terms of the numbers go down, but I think it's good news, and it's less crime, I suppose, and less cases that we're prosecuting for your city, but it could go up again. So, all right, so I'm really excited about the start of a Carver County Drug Court, and maybe you've seen in the paper or heard about drug courts and what they are, but essentially, drug courts are a treatment court. It's very similar to our successful Veterans Court, and it's an alternative way of processing, handling, and prosecuting cases. And so we started a Veterans Court, and I think it was probably about 2012. And what that is again, that's a specialty court which takes defendants that are veterans and qualify for our program and don't put them down the traditional channel where they go to court, they get processed, here's your fine, you're on probation. We put them through a different channel which has intensive services. And arguably, it's more intensive and difficult than traditional court. But when they come out and they graduate, they're more productive members of society. Recidivism is reduced. They've treated mental health, substance abuse, other things. They've had accountability. And we're trying to get them to be a productive citizen. People have embraced, and communities have embraced that approach to veterans because they live a productive life when they're working and living here in their community. They go serve our country, put their lives at risk, and they come back and something is amiss for some of them. Not all of them, of course, right? I don't want to judge everyone, but some that struggle with alcoholism and substance abuse and mental health issues, and then they committed a crime. And so we have been very successful, and the state has been very successful to treat these people through our Veterans Court. So we talked in the last 5 years, have been planning and discussing about when is the right time to try and start a drug court. And it's an expensive endeavor, so can we get a grant? So we applied for a drug court grant last year, and it's an intense amount of work and gathering data, and you have to do it right if you're going to be successful. And I'm really pleased that we were successful and found out in the last month that we're going to receive a $500,000 drug court grant for, I think it's 4 years. It starts in 2020. So $500,000 that's going to fund this court. Like I've told our office, now the hard work starts, because now we've got to start this court and have these services and get everything in place, and we're working hard for that. But it really is a shift in how the courts are handling these substance abuse cases, and it surprisingly targets high-risk, high-needs offenders. It's not a low-level offender that gets busted with, a small amount of methamphetamines or heroin. It's actually, because we can deal with those individuals in our traditional court system, and we have learned through best practices. This has been, 30 years they've had drug courts, and there's over 3,400 of them in the United States. So we're learning from them about what works, what's the best practices. Consequences right up front are important. Believe it or not, incentives are important too. Hey, you've done a good job. One-on-one contact with the judge, even spending 3 minutes with each defendant, makes a huge difference for the judge, saying, you're doing a good job, but here's what we need to see, or you tested positive this weekend, you're going to jail for 2 days, and here's why. And so you have this whole team that's made up of partners in our justice system that work together on these cases. It's pre-plea, so meaning they don't plead guilty, because you have to have something there for them, an incentive to say, why would you want to get in a program that's going to be more intensive? We know why, because you want to get healthy and reduce recidivism, but they're in a different state. So we have to offer something as an incentive to say, maybe we'll keep it off your record if you can successfully complete this program. And therefore you won't have this conviction if you can complete it. So there's frequent alcohol and drug testing, frequent court appearances. That's really important to bring them forward. And as I mentioned, it treats substance abuse and mental health issues. We expect about 25 of these participants at some point. And so the team is made up of one judge. So the Honorable Michael Wenzel is going to be the judge. We have a prosecutor, Kelly Small, in our office that is going to handle the case. We have the defense counsel and the public defender's office are on board. We have a treatment provider, North Star Regional, treatment coordinator, supervision, law enforcement, and evaluators. So it really is the best in Carver County coming together. And we didn't go and say, okay, you get to go hire 3 new people in the county. People stepped forward and said, like, and you say, okay, who's going to do this? All right, we're going to do it because we believe in it. We want to change the way we're handling some of these cases. But I want to emphasize, too, that it's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's not a matter of, we're going to go soft on these individuals. We have a compassionate human approach to it, but there's consequences, too. But we want to look at a different way of treating some of these cases. But we're not going to process a murder case where somebody provides heroin to somebody and they die and put them through drug treatment court, obviously, or are they right candidate? If they committed a violent act, we're not going to have violent offenders that shot at somebody during some incident as well. But so we also importantly save money from this program, and the average savings is $6,000 per participant. So that's what the estimates are, again, across the nation. And they've studied this, and they have to prove it for the federal government to say, I want to give you $500,000. They want to see that recidivism works and that you're saving the county's money because we don't have them going to jail. And they're not coming back through the system and processing, hey, this is your 3rd time in here. Now we're going to do another 90 days in jail. Now you're going to prison. So if we can get them clean and give them the help and the structure and the focus and accountability, then we can reduce recidivism. And that's been shown to be reduced by 58%. And that's from the National Drug Source Research Center. So how does this help Carver County? It improves public safety. It saves the taxpayers money. It reduces recidivism, and then it reduces drug use. In 2015 to 2018, Carver County had 20 drug-related deaths. So 20 deaths in just Carver County of drug-related deaths. And we see them in our office all too often. And we've prosecuted some of these third-degree murder cases where they provide heroin that is laced with fentanyl. And obviously we have the most high-profile case, certainly with Prince, that had fentanyl. We didn't know what he was taking, but it's laced with fentanyl. And so people are going out there and they're getting heroin. They think it's heroin, and it's not. It's laced with fentanyl. That you have these drug dealers that don't care, they don't know, and they just want to make a buck, so they're lacing it with this highly potent additive, and that is cheaper to get, frankly. So we're going to start in 2020, and our board has been committed that when this money runs out, that they will look seriously upon funding this, and they were committed to Veterans Court, and they're committed to drug court, and they see the value in that. And it's not just the county, it's cities like yourselves that get behind it as well and support it. And I'm pleased that I can come forward and at least talk about that. And we're very excited, and we're hoping to apply even now for a Veterans Court grant that's going to be coming out shortly. And so we don't want to leave money on the table that we can possibly get. So thanks for allowing me to at least talk about that as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's very interesting. How long is the $500,000 grant going to last, do you anticipate?
Yeah, it's a 4-year grant. Now, there's an extension, an enhancement grant, too, after that we'll apply for, and it's possible we could get that. You take a lot of our other counties. I know Wright County they awarded a grant, and they got an enhancement grant as well. And Scott County has a drug court, and they got a grant. So there was $8.5 million allotted federally for these grants across the United States. And there were 18 awards, and 5 of them were in Minnesota. So that was surprising to see most people in Minnesota that applied for them, and I wondered why aren't there more people applying or counties applying for these? But out of $8.5 million, I don't know how many millions that was just for Minnesota, but the state's behind it as well. And it really is a different way of looking at this approach, but it's not a soft-on-crime approach. That's not it. It's not a matter of we're going to coddle these individuals because, like I said, they come in and you tested positive, you're going to have consequences, and you don't necessarily successfully get through this program if you continue to violate or you continue to make mistakes. Then you'll go through the traditional approach. But we don't. It's a misnomer when people say, "Well, we just have so many drug offenders that are in prison." It is very difficult to, at least in my experience, is to get into prison with drug charges, meaning it's difficult that you have to have a long history of that type of drug crimes that you're given opportunities to succeed. It's not, hey, you got busted with some heroin and we're going to send you to prison. I mean, there's something else that's there. And so our prison systems, at least in Minnesota, are not just loaded up with all of these people that are on marijuana, busted for marijuana. Now, I can't speak across the United States, and I'm not saying that there aren't probably cases that you look at, you say that doesn't seem fair, but at least in Carver County, from our experience, you have to have a number of violations. You're given enough number of opportunities, or the crime is so offensive or dangerous or violent or something's connected with that.
I have a question. So you were talking about the stipulations to go to drug court. How do you decide? I mean, is there kind of the checklist, or it has to be to this level, that's the cutoff? Who makes it into drug court for those programs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so we have protocol that our office follows, and it's important that the county attorney's office has that say in determining who's going to get into a certain program, because we're not a system where we have committees that determine if we prosecute people or how they get in there. But we have it's not necessarily a checklist, but it is something that you evaluate. Are they qualified? So there's people that are just not going to be qualified. If you've committed a seriously violent act, like as I mentioned, you're not going to get in the program. And so I think it's going through and learning about, okay, who should we have in these programs? And it isn't the low-level offenders. It's people that are more higher risk. And that surprised me, to be honest with you. I thought, really? So you can have a drug dealer in there that is a higher risk person? Well, we have to evaluate them and to see their criminal history. And so our office will have a number of attorneys that will evaluate and learn about this in a screening process, essentially, to determine if they should get in that program.
Well, good luck with everything.
Thank you.
I really hope it works. I mean, the crisis of drug abuse is going off the charts, and I just think that anything we can do to try to rehabilitate people and get them back into society is a great thing. So,
Yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah, thanks.
questions?
Nope.
Concerns? Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you. All right. No public hearings this evening. Moving on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Mock and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving on to unfinished business, 8.1, the Carver County All Hazard Mitigation Plan. Ms. Miller, welcome back.
Hello, thank
How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Just wanted to make sure I brought everything with me. So I can start really quick by letting you know, I did hear back from the state mitigation officer regarding the certification of your levy and whether or not that would qualify for mitigation funds.
Great.
And unfortunately, the certification process does not. They only do structural projects for mitigation funds and planning.
Okay. Summer. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for following up. I appreciate it.
No problem. And then on the other issue of the map that we were looking at, that focused on the economic building loss, I did some research on that, and I was able to find and then verify with our consultants that right before the map, there's an explanation of what they mean by parcels and buildings. So it says on the, I know at the top of the title of the map that it is, let me just read that. It's the estimated economic building-related loss by census block within the 100-year floodplain. And on 2 pages above that, it says the total estimated number of damaged buildings, and then in parentheses, parcels as surrogate, which means that they're looking at the economic loss in terms of the land, the cost, the value of the land, not the buildings. And above that, it talks about if only a minimal amount of damage to building is predicted, and in this case, there aren't any buildings, it's possible to see 0 damaged building counts while also seeing economic losses. And so we're looking at how the flooding in that area over the years have impacted that parcel of land that we were looking at, which was right around, right along the river, that over by the. Sorry, not real good with exactly the location, but right over by the park. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any further questions
Yes.
about? Okay.
Go ahead. No, go.
Mine wasn't fully formed yet, so if you're ready.
No. Okay. Does that make sense? Yes,
Okay,
it makes
I'm
sense to
sorry.
me.
And when you say park, you're referring to Rapids Lake, not
I
Riverside
believe
Park?
so. Here, hold on. Let
Or
me.
maybe both?
Let me. I may have misspoke. Let me pull this up again and look at the map a little closer. I will admit that it was a difficult map to read, especially the size of it.
356.
356?
I believe that's the one I was looking at, the one I was at.
Because I was looking at the map. Thought
It-
that she just read it from
The yellow highlight.
page 228.
It might be in
She
two
read
different
it,
places.
She read it
Okay.
from page 226 at the bottom.
Okay.
So when I'm looking at in the plan, I know that your numbers, like what's printed on the page, don't correlate. But if you look at the number that's printed on the actual page of the plan, it's page 67.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at, which is 228.
You might be looking at last week's, and this one, it's
I'm looking at
356.
October 21st. Let's
It
see.
is in 2 places.
Oh, okay,
It is on
okay.
228 also.
Yep, because They include a lot of the maps within the plan, and then
Oh.
they're included later on in
Oh,
the
okay,
plan
gotcha.
as reference.
Okay.
So, yeah, I
What
believe
page in the plan had that highlighted section?
that is page 67, and it's hard. I shouldn't have said the
Page-
part.
Okay, because page 67 has the.
Yes. Oh, yep. And then above on page 66, before that, it shows the, it breaks it down between the different types of damage that throughout the whole county, not just Carver, the city of Carver. And then on page
Why is it not highlighted?
65 is the verbiage that I referred to, and it's the last paragraph of page 65. I don't know if that helps. So it's just 2 pages before the map. And the area on the map, when I looked on Google Maps, is really around, it's like the wetland area around the river. Are we seeing the same thing?
Sorry, it's just taking a little bit.
No.
It comes with the
I
page.
understand, and it's hard with this particular map because it's like the size of an eraser.
I don't know, I'm just, when I'm reading it still, it just says these numbers derived from aggregate building inventories, which are assumed to be dispersed evenly across the census block. I understand that later down, a little bit farther, it says that parcels can be surrogate building losses. I just think it's very confusing to be written that way.
Sure.
Because even when I read the first part of that paragraph,
Sure.
it may say that it's can be interpreted as degrees of loss, but it also says it's from aggregate building inventories, which
Right.
are assumed to be dispersed. So
Right, because they are, I'm guessing that they're getting an average when they're looking at like how many buildings per square, whatever. And I'm not an expert on this, so I can't give you definite, but that was the interpretation that I had and was verified by our contractor was with that section is that it's not a specific, they don't count every building in the entire,
right, but do they count? And I mean, there's zero.
Right.
So
Right, and so, and then that's what that second, or that last sentence is at the end of the paragraph where they're saying the parcels as surrogate. So we're looking at the economic impact that land being flooding had on the community.
no one else on the council has any issues.
Yeah. And so there's 2 different places. If you see on that map, there's the sources of where they got this information. And one is the census, and then the other, you see it says HAZUS. And that is a FEMA software that GIS specialists use to estimate those damages. So it's a program where you can put in like over this area, this type of event happens, and it'll help you estimate the physical impacts, the social impacts, and the economic impacts. So they are putting all of these different scenarios into the software, and it can kind of churn out this information. And there's a lot of information in there. I've never personally used it, so I can't get into the details of that software.
Any other questions? Anybody want to make a motion?
Any what?
Anybody want to make a motion?
I will do that. I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 144-19, adopting Carver County All Hazard Mitigation Plan.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Councilmember Sayer and a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion?
Brian, is this everything everything that you need. You know everything that, because I can't get back an hour of my life reading through the first 100 pages. It's, anytime when I read this, I'm hearing about weather events.
Mhm.
Weather events, more weather events.
Mhm.
And yet everything in the first 90-some pages of it, they're confusing weather events with climate change events. And nobody can tell me what a climate change event is. If it's a weather event, it's a weather event. But climate change, I just got a problem with it. I don't believe in it. And so after section 5.2, where they get into the resolutions and the findings and some of the stuff, then they deal with all facts. Climate change is not mentioned once after that. So I can read that happily, knowing that Brian's going to be happy, knowing that everything he has to follow for FEMA. But the first 90 pages of it is just, I can't get that part of my life back. But anyway, that's my event.
Yeah. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to new business 9.1, the National Prescription Opiate Litigation Class Action. Mr. Harris.
Why is there so much of this on our agenda?
Why
Oh.
a lot of legal lawyers, etc. tonight?
This is on your agenda because the city, like all cities, is a potential member of a class action brought against the distributors and manufacturers of a panoply of opiates. It's gotten a lot of press. It's going to be on the front page of tomorrow's paper for something I'm going to talk about in a moment. The main reason it's on your agenda is, candidly, the League of Minnesota Cities sent out a missive to every city administrator and city manager saying you should have a report on this so the council can make an affirmative decision about whether it should stay in or opt out of the class action. I'll get there. I'm going to try and make this really short because the decision's probably pretty obvious that you want to stay in. There's been a fair amount of litigation commenced by a variety of entities against drug manufacturers and drug distributors relating to the opioid crisis in America. Most of all of the states have commenced actions. In Minnesota, quite a few of the counties have, including, most interestingly, Carver County. And I think 3 Native American tribes have. Additionally, in Cuyahoga County, Ohio, which is Cleveland, an action was started that in September got certified as a class action to include effectively all local governmental units in the United States unless they opt out. So that means that litigation potentially covers the interests of all the cities and counties. The lead plaintiffs in that, Cuyahoga County and Summit County in Ohio, who had companion litigation going, settled that companion litigation very late last night against the 3 largest drug distributors in America, which is AmerisourceBergen, Cardinal, and McKesson, and a relatively smaller pharmaceutical player, Teva Pharmaceuticals, for about $260 million. That doesn't impact the class action. The class action will still move forward. For the city, the real basic decision is there any reason you would opt out of the class action? Well, a couple of things. First of all, not in any means to diminish the opioid crisis in this country and including this community. The city of Carver is really not the public health provider here. I mean, it's the county. The likelihood of the city of Carver starting its own action, which is what you would have to do, and paying the cost of doing it, which is what Carver County is doing. You know, it obviously wasn't part of Mark Metz's presentation tonight, but the county's retained an outside law firm to go after this, and they're incurring significant expenses. You know, to the extent the city has any interest in being involved in the opioid litigation, the most cost-effective means to do so is to stay in the national class action. there's probably ultimately going to be a recovery. There will probably be a very significant recovery in terms of, although that's certainly speculative, in terms of what, if anything, Carver would receive out of it. Here's kind of class action 101. The claims ultimately get resolved and a settlement pool gets created. At that point in time, the criteria for all the participants in the class, including if you opt in the city of Carver, are evaluated, and they list criteria in terms of whether you are viably entitled to any of the money. Now, what the judge has done, the federal judge in Ohio has done, is he's appointed a committee of 49 representative plaintiffs, to help work this out. There's 2 Minnesota representatives on that committee, Hennepin County and the city of St. Paul. So there's Minnesota representation in there. I mean, to me, the most cost-effective thing is for the city to stay in the class action. Recognize that all of the states have their own separate action going. The states were very close to a substantial settlement with Purdue Pharmaceuticals 5 or 6 weeks ago, and ultimately the states collectively decided, and our Attorney General was one of those that decided no, it wasn't enough money, and Purdue Pharmaceuticals filed bankruptcy, and now they'll go slog it out in bankruptcy court for a couple of years. If Minnesota, will the state ultimately be successful in collecting and being part of the state litigation against the distributors and the pharmaceutical companies? It's speculative, but the answer is probably yes. Will any of that trickle down to the cities? The answer is we don't know. The only example I can give you is the tobacco litigation settlement of 20 years ago, which was a huge sum, which went into the state's general fund and got used for all sorts of things. So to the extent the city has interest in opioid litigation, the most cost-effective way, in my opinion, to protect your interest is to stay in the class action. Can't guarantee that you're ultimately going to get any money out of it, but the likelihood of the city of Carver actually wanting to go out and incur the expenses and being able to prove up the damages for itself strikes me as pretty remote, and I could never in good faith recommend that you do that. So in the council packet, there are 2 resolutions that are both numbered 15419, and they're the polar opposite of each other, because although I know what my recommendation is going to be, I have to present both alternatives to you. My recommendation is that you adopt the resolution to stay in the class action, in which case you sign the resolution and you don't have to do anything else. In class actions, you usually have to affirmatively opt out. You have to sign a form and send it in. If you want to stay in, you usually have to do nothing. And that's what I'm recommending you do.
My only question after reading through this, you answered it, was there any upside to opting out? Because it certainly didn't seem like there's any downside to opting in.
No, and I don't see any.
You've clarified that for me.
I would never see the city of Carver spending the money to start its own lawsuit on this.
Okay.
It might be different if you were a large public health provider and you were directly incurring the costs related to this, but your costs are incidental and a little more difficult to prove because they tend to get blended into the policing contract. They get blended into the, into prosecution, and it's really hard to isolate those.
So you mentioned about protecting our interests. Can you elaborate on that for me?
Well, the issue is does the city and has the city suffered
Damages?
compensable and provable damages from the opioid crisis? Have there been damages within the community? Of course there have. Could we ever effectively prove them and then cost effectively litigate them against all these drug companies? I think the answer to that's no. Whereas if you stay in the class action, you're part of the class, and when the ultimate settlement is derived, and the ultimate settlement is going to be a really big number because it's going to be nationwide for the cities and counties, except those that opt out. Then the issue is what gets negotiated in terms of what you would have to do to prove up getting a portion of it. But at least then the liability is decided and the money's there. Then it's just a question of whether you meet the criteria to get any part of it.
Larry, I have a question. If the county moves forward with things, or if at the state level there becomes some type of suit, do we exclude ourselves from benefiting any type of monetary gain?
The state and the county both have their own actions going right now. The issue with the state is I don't know what they'll do with the money, and that would be wildly speculative. The only example in Minnesota is the tobacco litigation, and that money didn't filter downstream. Might it be different in the opioid litigation settlement? It might be. I don't know. But I'm hard pressed to advise you to go out and retain a private law firm and spend a substantial sum of money, try and go and then figure out what the city's damages are, because you're not the direct public health provider in the community. I don't doubt for a minute that there have been serious consequences within the community, but they're a little more difficult to prove as opposed to a county or a city that has a large public health outreach program. They provide those services. They have their own law enforcement where they can directly attribute and allocate it out. So, I mean, I just don't see it for the city of Carver. I don't see it being cost effective.
No, and I appreciate that, especially here repeatedly that it's not cost effective because it would cost us so much to prove how we were affected. So, me, I support it. And thanks for answering my question.
Yes. All right. With that, I'll make the motion that we approve Resolution 154-19, opting in to the negotiation class in the National Prescription Opiate Litigation.
I'll make a second to the motion.
So there's a motion by Mayor Johnson, a second by Councilmember Sayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Larry. Thank you. Council communications.
I mean, we had the business council meeting. I'm trying to remember some of the highlights. We shared the parks plan. That got some good feedback from a downtown perspective. We talked about the Jonathan Carver Parkway Task Force and asked and said that we were going to communicate out to the business owners in the area looking for representation on that task force.
That's what I want.
Okay, you hit on it. All right, that's all I got.
We had the Parks Commission meeting last week, and a lot of those work that they've done for months in previous meetings was displayed earlier today at the work session. And I understand some things will start to be available on the city's website as far as some concept plans. So I think it'll be exciting to look at that and see things move forward.
Almost a couple of weeks ago now, the House Capital Investment Committee was out. That's the one that I wanted to
that one. Okay. Good,
and
good.
council members Mock and McKnight and I took probably close to a dozen legislators and then probably another solid handful plus of staff members. We took a walk out on the levee and were able to show them what the investment in the levee and what certification would mean to the city of Carver. And I think we probably had as good a response as we could have asked for. Everybody seemed really engaged and asked lots of good questions.
Erin, I don't know, do you know if we're going to have an HBC meeting? We will have one next Tuesday. Okay. And then I just wanted to remind too that this Sunday is the Carver Lions Trunk or Treat. So that'll be down here on Broadway. The road will be closed off for that. So sorry for any inconvenience, but it's for the children. So, and that goes from 1 to 3 p.m. on Sunday. So they are still looking for trunks. So if anybody feels like having a trunk to hand out some candy to kids, feel free. On Facebook under Carver Lions, you can get a hold of Lindsay and she can help coordinate. That is all I have.
Planning Commission Thursday? Nope. I got nothing. What's that? What? I know I was. Monroe wasn't there though.
Wow.
Did we go?
Splitting a lot.
Oh, that's right. Lot split.
It was 8 minutes.
Big.
It was
I got
obviously memorable.
It was. I got
All right.
nothing.
Any other communications? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion by Councilmember Mock, a second by Councilmember McKnight. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Good